Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast. The Sencast is here to help everyone learn more about Send. Yes, you can go and read stuff. There's lots you can go and read, but we're all really busy and we don't have the luxury to sit and read. The Sencast is a great way to get the same consistent message to schools, external professionals and parents. My guest this week is Dr. Joanna Grace. She's now a doctor. Jo is a sensory engagement inclusion specialist as well as many other things. And in this episode, we discussed sensory struggles with eating. The Sencast is created by us here at B Squared. Steps for Life is one of our assessment frameworks within our Connecting Steps assessment software. It covers functional academic skills, life skills and employability skills. And it goes from the most complex up to functional level 2. And it's designed to be used from Key Stage 4 onwards. And rather than me talk about it, let's hear from one of our schools. We introduce Steps for Life having experienced the benefits of using Connecting Steps. It enables us to assess the relevant skills our post-16 students are developing to prepare them for adult life. Steps for Life has a very similar format to other B Squared frameworks that we are already using in school. And this means staff are already competent and confident to use it. Also, student information is easily transferred, which saves so much time. So those skills automatically transfer from our previous frameworks into Steps for Life. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through Steps for Life or any other of our frameworks and how they can help you. Now, let's get on with that podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing sensory struggles with eating. And discussing this topic with me is Joanna Grace. Jo is a sensory engagement and inclusion specialist, a PhD achiever, author, trainer, TEDx speaker, and founder of the Sensory Projects. Joanna has worked with people with learning disabilities and neurodivergent conditions from birth to old age. Welcome back, Dr. Jo.
I think I'm a PhD survivor rather than a PhD achiever, but thanks for having me back.
Always. I was a fussy eater. I wasn't a white food, bland food person, but there are things that I was given to eat I simply couldn't. Typically fruit, but often some vegetables, and tomato can fit in either of those, depending on how you're feeling on that day. And I feel I have a little PTSD from battles over broccoli and some other food. And as I've grown up, I've realised it wasn't about the taste, which everyone seems to think it often is. It was the texture, and for me, it's always the texture, and I would be absolutely useless on I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here with those. That's no go for me. I have to know what it's going to go in my mouth, and I have to know how it's going to feel.
That's fair enough. I was a beige eater. I only ate beige and ketchup, and then later beige and Marmite. The unpredictability of your mother's cooking compared to what comes out of a crisp packet was something that I struggled with as a child, and I didn't begin to eat normally until after university, and my parents, husband, friends would all question my use of the word normally in association with my current eating now. So I definitely eat a more diverse diet now.
And you said your mother and the crisp packet, but I believe you didn't eat crisp when you were young either.
It was my bridging food to more proper food. But I think I work as a sensory engagement specialist, and ordinarily I'm looking at how I can create really amazing, interesting, accessible sensory experiences for people with the most profound levels of disability. And to do that, I have to learn about the different sensory systems and their development and all the little sort of nooks and crannies of them, which I find fascinating. And your point at the start that it wasn't the taste, it was the texture. Quite often, if we're just thinking of taste, that's just one of a great many sensory systems. And if you are somebody who struggles with the sensory world because you're processing sensory information differently, then it's very likely that you would be somebody who struggles with the extraordinarily sensory experience of eating. And when you support a child who struggles with eating, it's very emotional. It's very undermining to parents and to people who care, because your job is to feed that person and keep them safe. And if you're not managing to do that, it does a number on you emotionally, and it can lead to very tense standoff situations. And also, everybody who has managed to feed their child will have an opinion on what you should be doing with your child or with your adult, because this is not something that's exclusive to childhood. And so it's a very muddled thing.
But it's as you said, it's very emotion. It's those things that you always look side to side, other children, what the parents, that look from that parent, because your child is leaving the sandwiches and just eating that. It's such a, as a parent, it's a really horrible zone to be in if your child's not a normal
Yeah, sorry
eater,
for
in
the use
air
of the word
quotes.
normal. But if you imagine that you are encountering, say you're encountering a touch sensation that you don't like. If I'd had bought like a bowl of awful muck into the studio and I was going, "Hey, Dale, touch this," most likely, if you were even willing to engage in it at all, you would extend your finger as far away from your body as you could. You'd sort of remove the rest of your body from the experience, and only with the furthest, most outreached extremity, just touch it a little bit. And if you're somebody who struggles with texture, like yourself, when I ask you to eat food, I'm not asking you to touch it with a part of your body like your finger. I'm asking you to touch it with a far, far more sensitive area of your body. Your lips and your tongue are going to get more touch information. I'm not asking you to touch it far away from you, not even up close to you or really, really near to you. I'm literally asking you to touch it in your face. It's so invasive. It's like beyond the private area. It's internal to your body. And I'm asking you to do that difficult touch sensation in your face. And at the same time as I'm asking you to do that, if you're somebody who struggles with the sensory world, then maybe you also struggle with sounds, you know. And if I had in your, you can be grateful that I don't. Like if I had an apple in the studio, I could eat it into the microphone and everybody would hear the sounds of eating. And they're not generally sounds that anybody likes, but our senses are partly the having of systems that work. You know, if you've got sense receptors that pick up information and bring it to the brain, then you have the capacity to potentially see, to potentially hear. But they are partly learned experiences. And one of the things that we commonly learn is to choose which sensory information we process. So when you bite into an apple and you crunch it up in your mouth, of course, the information about what that sounds like is carried to your ears because they're right next door to your mouth. But we don't generally hear it because we learn to sort in our brain that this is not something I'm going to listen to. And if you haven't learned to do that sorting, again, I'm asking you to listen to a disgusting noise, not far away at a low volume, not even up close or next to you, but literally in your face. And I'm asking you to do that at the same time as I'm asking you to touch the weird thing in your face. I'm also asking you to smell, and your smell is the only sense that's processed by the limbic brain. So it's processed by the emotional brain. When you smell stuff, it has an emotional impact. And I'm putting that emotional impact in your face and the taste and all of the other things all at the same time, all of them not at a safe extended distance that you can get away from, but all of them in your face all at the same time. It is the most overwhelming set of sensations you could access. And if you are that person, you likely have somebody in other situations who, when you feel overwhelmed, like when you get stressed at the supermarket because it's too noisy, when you get het up at the party because Aunt Doris's perfume is too strong, when you are stressed in the park, that person takes you away. They might not really get it, they might not understand, but there's normally somebody in your life who is the person who, in those moments of sensory pressure, takes you by the hand and gets you out of there. They are the person who rescues you. and they are most likely in the situation of eating to be the person who is doing it to you. So not only do you have all that extraordinary stress of the multitude of sensory experiences and pressures invading your body, you are alone without your usual protector, because that protector person needs you to eat. And so it's such a muddled and volatile and stressful and emotive topic. And it's so hard for people to cope with.
The one bit you didn't mention in that sensory experience is the bit that I really struggle with foods like tomato,
Yeah.
and that's the swallowing. So my mum used to try and make me eat tomatoes, and I would have it in a bolognese. I would have it on a tomato sauce on a pizza. I would have tomato ketchup. I love tomato soup, but a raw tomato with those seeds,
Yeah.
you can put it in my mouth. I can chew it. I've had bruschetta. I can cope with that. But swallowing a slice of tomato, that commitment, doing the swallowing thing, that's a commitment in your head to committing to this. And it's not like when you swallow, the feeling's gone. No, you feel it go down your throat.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum making me go, we're not having dinner until you eat this. And I fully was experiencing that forced eating. And I put it in my mouth and I chewed it and I tried to swallow it. And that's when it literally, basically, as it started to go down, gag reflex kicked in and out it came. And at that point, my mum went, oh, okay, I won't make you do that again. But it's that swallowing, that sensory. We all watch people try and eat oysters.
Yes. It's a good first dates thing.
Yeah, so you watch someone on oysters go, and it goes down and it's straight back out again, completely involuntary from their face. Their body is protecting them from that disgusting thing. Just in my head, it's like, for some people, every food is that sort of experience, apart from maybe one.
And it's not just the food as well. So I read a lot of research to underpin the work that I do. And quite often I'm struggling to find relevant content because the people I work on behalf of, people with profound intellectual and multiple disabilities, are some of the most marginalized and vulnerable people in our society. And one of the many ways in which they're marginalized and made vulnerable is through their exclusion from research. But with food, there's huge amounts of it because the gastro chefs, like people like Heston Blumenthal, have looked in great detail at how sensation affects eating. And so we know a lot about how cross experiences of sensation affect eating. So it's really weird little things like the font that the wine is written in the wine menu will affect the flavour of the wine on your tongue. The texture of the tablecloth between your fingertips as you eat the ice cream will affect the texture of the ice cream as you swallow it. The hand that you pick up your glass in changes the taste of the wine in the glass. And there's all these cross connections between the senses. So you hear of those chefs who create immersive dining experiences where, you know, you're wafted with senses and particular music is played to go with particular courses. And what they're doing is they're using that knowledge of how the senses relate to each other. You know, loud noises will sharpen flavors on your tongue to create a kind of perfect sensory experience of eating. And if you imagine the setup of these restaurants where they create the perfect sensory experience of eating with the heavy, thick tablecloths and the music playing and just the right smells wafting through, and then you juxtapose that with your average school dining hall.
It's a perfect sensory experience.
You couldn't
Probably
get
not the one
anything.
you want.
There was sort of the metal scraping of chair legs on floors and the clatter of cutlery and the smell of other children and all of that. Like, you couldn't create a worse recipe for making eating accessible to somebody who struggles at a sensory level. And so it's partly about the food and it's partly about the environment around. And then when you're thinking of that environment around, if the adults in that environment are stressed, the children will pick up on that. You know, if it was just colouring in on the table and all the adults were on edge as you approach the colouring in, the child is going to be like, I don't want to do colouring in today. Colouring in's not feeling okay today. And when you put the plate of food down in front of the child and you really hope they'll eat it, and you're not creating emotional tension in the room because you're malicious. The emotional tension is there because you really, really love that child and you want them to eat. It's such a difficult thing to cope with. I remember when I was a special school teacher, we often had students who struggled to eat. And I had one year, I have to be careful how I say this. One year that I'm not going to name the year, I had a teaching assistant briefly in my class. They really weren't interested in being a teaching assistant. They just got the job because they needed a job because they, for whatever reasons, they needed a job and it was all right for 6 months and they did it and then they found something else that they wanted to do. So they were totally uninvested in the children. They were totally disinterested in learning about the different ways of being that were represented in my classroom. And they were amazing at getting those children to eat because they just sit next to them at lunchtime, no stress at all. Like, shh, but lift up something on the spoon, put it near the child's mouth. If the child ate it, it ate it. If it didn't, it didn't. If they weren't fussed, they weren't motivated. And children felt so much less pressure around them. So sometimes people will say, like, my mother-in-law can get my daughter to eat, but I can't. Or, their sibling can get my child to eat. And it will be to do with that atmosphere around things. So it's one of these weird situations where if you are the person who really, really cares, you might not be the best person for the job in this situation.
I remember forcing, I look back and go, I should not have done this, but we'd hit with my children, spaghetti and sausages on toast. Yeah, so the tomato sauce, they loved it. I was like, oh, you're going to love tomato soup. It was a 20-minute battle of just trying to get it into her mouth. I'm literally going, it's the same. It's basically, we've just taken the sauce from spaghetti and put it in a bowl. Nope. Went on for 20 minutes. And it was, I just want you to taste it. That's as far. It wasn't eating a bowl. It was just, please, I just want you to taste it. And it was 20 minutes. And when she finally did, she absolutely loved it.
Oh, I wasn't expecting the story to end like that.
But it was different. She was uncertain. It was going to taste different. It was lots of little changes. But ultimately, what was in the bowl, she liked, but it was almost presented in a different way. She literally went, more. And I was like,
excellent.
I knew you were going to like this. I knew, and it was like so obvious she was going to love it. And then I got pictures of her drinking soup through a straw. It was just so obvious she was going to love it. But it was because it was not on toast, not on a plate, not with the spaghetti. Lots of things have changed, so it's going to be different. I'm not sure if I should have done that battle.
It sounds like it worked. I think it shows it's a really stressful thing, and it's stressful because you care, and it's stressful because you want them to eat. And when you are stressed like that, people who care about you will give you advice, like on what you should do.
And you're basically that child in that high chair, not knowing what to do, but being given lovely things. If you just, it's like the next level up.
So people will say, just let them go hungry. They'll eat when they're hungry. And I have a friend whose 11-year-old was hospitalized because they didn't eat when they're hungry, because you only eat when you're hungry if you feel hunger. And if you have significant differences to your interoceptive sense, which is your sense that feels your internal sensations, that's the sense that tells you whether you need to go to the toilet, it tells you what you're feeling, it tells you whether you're hungry. If you don't know whether you're hungry or not, you don't eat when you're hungry because you don't know. And so general advice like, oh, don't let them down from the dinner table until they've finished what's on their plate. Don't let them have pudding unless they eat all their vegetables. All of those things. Maybe those things work for people who are just willfully being difficult eaters. I don't know where those people are. But maybe if it's something a bit more than just somebody being awkward, maybe if it has a sensory cause, then those strategies aren't going to work. And when you get told by the people around you, this is what you've got to do, like you've got to starve your child, you've got to force your child, you're encouraged by people around you to get into emotional battles with your child or with your adult or with whoever it is, that then undermine that connection between you and them, between you and those people giving you the advice, and things get more and more fraught. and understanding it through a neurodivergent lens and thinking, what could this be? Being curious rather than the start point to the thought being the child has to eat. The start being, I wonder why they're not. I wonder why. I wonder why they'll eat that, but they won't eat that. Won't eat this. If the start point was there, then you have more. Have you ever met people who can't eat foods that are touching on the plate?
Yep.
Because I've met lots of people who are very happy to eat this food and also this food, but not if they've touched on the plate.
Yep.
Yeah.
I personally don't get, if I've got like a roast dinner, I will eat a forkful of roast potato. I will eat a forkful of roast beef. I will eat the
Yes, I see
vegetables.
where you're heading.
Why would I put roast beef, roast potatoes, and peas all on the fork at the same time? I'm not going to enjoy anything. Well, just put it all in a blender. But that's me. But yeah, the food touching thing, in some ways I do. There's certain times I will get that. Yeah, that should not touch that. Not in a, I'm going to throw my plate across the room way, but certain foods do not touch. I can't see an example, but there will be something where I just go, gravy goes on everything but that type thing. But it's never, but for some people, my daughter, if a pea's been on her plate, she wants a new plate. She just hates peas. I don't know what they've ever done to her. But she absolutely detests them. So it's literally, if I want to wind her up, I'll pick up a pea and just roll it across the table towards her. And she knows I'm winding her up.
My husband and I don't get to go out very often, but every now and then we get to go out to dinner, and we go to the same place because he has an autistic wife. So we go to the same place and she orders the same thing. And I've recently become a celiac, which is an autoimmune condition. So if I eat the wrong things, they affect my brain and all sorts of things. And the people in this restaurant have learned. So we now order a meal. He goes, "Can we have?" It's chips that are topped with something. That's what it's supposed to be. But so he'll order it, and then he'll say, "And can we have the autistic celiac version of that?" And they have to swap some of the ingredients out to cope with celiac, and they serve me the chips separately, dry, and then I have the toppings on a different plate as the autistic version of that menu. But that idea that there's a right and wrong way of eating you can eat that, but not if it's mixed with that. Or so I have a correct way of eating a digestive biscuit. Like there is a right way of eating a digestive biscuit, and and if anybody wants to learn the correct way for eating
I need to learn.
I mean, I can't. Wait, you have to imagine obviously a McVitie's digestive biscuit. They are a dome shape, the flat bottom and there's curved edges. The very pointy edge of the curve, not the curvy bit, but the corner bit where it reaches the base, is a slightly darker brown than the rest of the biscuit because it has not burned, but it is thinner, so it's cooked more. So you should eat that first so that the biscuit is all one color. So you sort of nibble off that corner rim, and then you have little dots that are around the biscuit. So you bite each of the dots off, but now your biscuit is a jagged edge shape. So then you have to nibble the biscuit clean again. Now you're down to the writing. So it has digestive and biscuit written in a semicircle around the center word McVitie's. So you nibble off the writing. And if you want to be really, really perfect, you could nibble off the letters in a correct order. But so long as you clean the writing off neatly, that's fine. Then you have possibly one of the most worrying things about a digestive biscuit, which is there are 3 dots on one side of that McVitie's down the middle and only 2 dots on the other side. It's very, very upsetting. There should be 3 dots on both sides. So you bite off the extra dot on the first side and then you clear the dots and then you're left with just the McVitie's biscuits thing, and then you nibble down the right. And that is the correct way to eat a digestive biscuit, and it should all be done with one's little finger out.
I would ask you how you eat a Bounty, but I know you don't like coconut.
I'm not a fan of coconut.
But there is the quick way, and then there is the I've got time way, which is to de-chocolate it.
I do de-chocolate a lot of things that I eat that are chocolate. Like I would do a similar thing with a Kit Kat. But my point with the digestive biscuit is that autistic brains, not all autistic brains, but many autistic brains, are really good at a kind of binary thinking. Like that is the right way to eat a biscuit and there was a wrong way to eat a biscuit. There was no grey area. You've either eaten the biscuit right or wrong. And that capacity to think in this really clear way is one of the things that makes us commonly good at maths, because it's a binary system. So things in my mind are right or wrong. They are safe or dangerous. They are good or bad. And what is sometimes missed in these conversations is that they layer up. So if I eat the biscuit right, I am safe and I'm a good person. And if I eat the biscuit wrong, I'm in danger and I'm a bad person. So eating the biscuit wrong has a consequence to my self-esteem and to my sense of personal safety. And I'm an autistic adult. I can articulate these things. I obviously know that how I eat a digestive biscuit has no actual consequences to my personal safety. But even knowing that, I can't navigate around that in my mind. If I eat the biscuit wrong, I will feel that I'm in danger and I will feel like a bad person. And so the importance of eating the biscuit right is really high, because it has consequences for my mental health and for how I'm experiencing life. And so when gravy touches the sausage on the plate, it's not just about, or it might not just be about the sausage now being a bit wet from the gravy. It could be that now you're a bad person and the situation has gone wrong. And all of that threat that you feel when you've done something wrong, you're going to get into trouble, and you go into a kind of panic mode, and that panic mode in association with food not being right is something that I've witnessed a lot.
So we have at home, that you cook the veg, carrots, whatever it is, you pour them in the colander, drain them off, and then you put them on the plate. We do the vegetables first because we can then dry the plate from that water that has followed the carrots out of the colander onto the plate. So we always have to dry the plates with kitchen roll. I actually never fussed about it, but I now do it for myself. But yes, we dry the plates. It's just my daughters don't like the wet plates. They don't like maybe putting a waffle on which has now got a soggy bottom. Such a simple little
I feel
thing.
like this is a marketing opportunity for some sort of absorbent plate.
But do you eat crackers?
Yes. So my foods when I was younger were toast and beans and toast and Marmite and toast and ketchup and bread and things, beige and tomato groupings. If you are supporting a child who is just, when children are first learning to eat, they have foods they don't like and foods they do like, and they might get a bit fussy and go, oh, I don't want any of those green ones because I just want to get straight to the cake. And you have a bit of just kind of ordinary negotiation. And children's taste buds are different. Children's ability to pick up the proteins that signal bitterness are more so. Broccoli does taste different to children than it does to adults, which is why they commonly don't like it. All of those things are all sort of part of the normal haggling of parenthood, and like, you are going to eat the greens and then you'll have the chocolate type of thing. If you were encouraging a child who's going through that process, you might say, "Oh, just try a little bit of it. Just try a bite of it, and then you'll get used to it over time." Or we'll just mix it in with a bit of this sauce, and you'll just have like a low level amount of it, and then you'll get used to it, and we'll make the sauce stronger as we go through. And start out foods for people who are struggling at a sensory level are often quite counterintuitive. So I remember one young man who wouldn't eat, he was a beige, just chips and crisps, beige eater. And his start out fruit and vegetable was limes. And you wouldn't, if you've got your kind of typical, not that there is such a thing, but if there was such a thing as your kind of typical fussy eater, you wouldn't be going, oh, I know, have a lime. You'd be like, have a tomato. It's a nice sweet vegetable. They're lovely, aren't they, Dale?
No.
Have a, you don't go lime as a start out thing. And when you look at how the sensory systems develop, it can make sense of why people go for certain things over others. So we are all born with a sweet tooth because our senses are about finding food and not becoming food. And if you find something sweet, you've found a good source of energy. You're more likely to be able to run away from the monsters. You're more likely to survive. We're all like geared towards high calorie substances. So it's very unsurprising that a lot of these people who will only eat beige and maybe one vegetable will also eat all the sweets you like. They're not fussy with food when it comes to sweets, but sweets are going to be really telling them you're safe because they've got lots of calories in. The other thing that's really common is to like things that are super crunchy or really hard. I've known children who won't eat food but will eat, bits of furniture or chew up plastic toys, and you think that can't taste nice. But that's your point at the start, that we're generally evaluating food by taste and not thinking about texture. And the textures that are horrible are like I can't eat mushrooms because of the texture. I couldn't eat a boiled egg because of the texture. The slidey textures are just really disturbing to me. They're wrong. And I used to have synesthesia when I was a child, which is cross-wiring between the sensory systems. And they think that a lot of autistic people are also synesthesics. And so I used to taste in shapes and hear in color. So when you have a taste in your mouth, it also produces the idea of shapes. And anything, those party balloons that are sort of bumpy, long and bumpy. I hate things that taste like that. But if you imagine a pyramid with lots of pyramids stuck on the outside, that's like my favorite flavor. And eggs and mushrooms are just too long and bumpy. You can't eat them. But things that crunch, from an evolutionary point of view, from an animal surviving in the wild point of view, crunchiness indicates freshness. So when you take the fruit down from the tree and it crunches, you know that it's fresh and safe to eat. If it was mushy or something, it's more of a warning. So things that have a strong crunch tell you I'm safe. Things that have high calories tell you I'm safe. And really, really strong crunches, like full on bite, there's a mechanism. So we have left over from those times of survival. We have mechanisms within our body that promote our survival in those circumstances. So one of them is that the protein our stomach produces to tell us that we're full doesn't go off until 20 minutes after we're full. And it's because we would have been roaming around trying to find food. You come across a big dead animal and you got to eat it all quickly, and you might not get another big dead animal for several months. So it's important that you eat as much of this as is humanly possible, so you fill up your stomach and then you keep going until you've filled up all your tubes and your gullet, and you're like coming out in your cheeks like a hamster. And that's why you have that delay. And there's loads of diet books that are written on the principle of just waiting until you know you're full, like put your knife and fork down between every mouthful and just go slowly, because then you'll go, oh, actually I'm full. Whereas what we normally do is go eat, 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 oh, this is great, and then you suddenly go, oh my goodness, I've eaten too much. And it's when that 20 minutes later you kick in and you realize I have massively overeaten. And one of the mechanisms that's in place is associated with very, very strong biting. So you imagine we're wandering around eating nuts and berries, and then the ADHD chap in the tribe manages to kill the wildebeest because he noticed it. His attention jumped to it. He shot it down. And now we've got this protein source that is our protein source, and we might not get another one for a long time. It's really important that we eat it. And so when you bite, and it is a bite that is the level of which you need to bite to rip meat from a carcass. So it's not like a little nippy bite, like if you're testing whether biting somebody else makes them upset or not. It's a proper full-on bite. When you bite at that level, a chemical is released in the brain that is deeply calming. And it's so that when you're around that carcass, you hear the twig snapping of the other monster approaching you in the bush, you're like, no, it's fine. I'm just going to stay here and keep eating. So if you were somebody who was massively stressed and you could bite and bite hard, it would create calm in your body and it would kind of slow time down for you. And so if you're in a situation of overwhelm, and I've worked with lots of people, adults and children, who bite. And I remember when I was a very junior teacher being shown on the members of more senior staff, they would have these scars on their arms that were a complete circle of little teeth, like a silver. And they would be shown to me as kind of, they were trying to scare me as a new teacher. They would say, you've got to watch out for so-and-so because he bites. And when he bites to the bone. And then they'd show their arm. And they were kind of proud of them. And I remember wanting one of these scars because I thought it would show that I'd like done my time. But witnessing those people who bite like that, they didn't bite to to get at anybody. It was never an attack. It was an expression of stress. And it's a very sensible thing to do to cope with stress, is to bite hard. Like we used to use it in surgery, didn't it? Bite down on the stick, bite down hard. It's a way of coping. And so food that has a good resistance to it, food that you have to bite really hard, can counter stress. And so if you were looking for a food substance that is like perfect in a sensory landscape for saying you're safe, it would be something sweet and crunchy. And it would also be something fatty, because fat tells you that we're going to survive the winter. We're going to, it's more. So a sweet, fatty, crunchy thing would be like the ideal sensory message of safety. And then you just look at the junk food available. It's like salted caramel, pretzels is what you want.
But also, I think the thing is with all those sweets and all that junk food is I can go to anywhere in the UK and walk into McDonald's and get a Big Mac and get something which is 98% similar to what I got in my local.
Yep.
I can go all the way to the other side of the world, go to Australia, walk into a McDonald's. The checkout might be in a different position. It might be a McCafe or something. There might be some different things on the menu, but there'll be a Big Mac. When I buy it and I bite into it, it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, something which is really powerful, something I've experienced with my own daughter going into a random cafe. She wasn't happy. I always just thought she was being just difficult. It's because it was, although we were having a food I knew she liked, bolognese is not one food.
No.
Bolognese is not a Big Mac. Macaroni cheese is not chicken nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
It's like saying macaroni. It's like saying dog.
Yes.
There are so many different versions of macaroni cheese. And it was that uncertainty of when I order, although it says macaroni cheese, what type of pasta, what type of cheese, how gloopy, how runny. There's so many variations of macaroni cheese. And that was a really big thing for my teenage daughter. She just wanted a Tesco meal deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because she knew she got that hoisin duck wrap, it would be exactly what she
miss those. Yeah.
expected. And it's that certainty that coming out of a packet gives you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I open a hoisin duck wrap, it's not going to be an unexpected flavour that if I picked up a blueberry or a tomato, it might be a bit squishy now.
Yeah.
It's
fruit
always
is not consistent in its flavour.
If it's out of a packet, it's going to be really consistent.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, whatever your own personal belief is, for me, if it's coming out of a packet, it's going to be exactly what I'm expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you are looking to support people who struggle at a sensory level with food, it's a really tricky one, because in other situations, you would take away the stress first, get them to a place of safety, get them to understand, and then reintroduce and go, okay, shall we try this? Now we're feeling safe. Now we understand what's going on. But you can't remove food, because you die if you remove food. So allowing people to eat whatever it is that they will eat, and it is frightening, and you do want to progress towards a balanced diet and all of that, but forcing it is very rarely a way to progress towards it. Then yeah, if it's packets of crisps that they eat, if it's McDonald's chips that they eat, they are eating food. It counts. You're doing okay. I remember doing a day about sensory struggles with eating for a parent carers group, and we had a room full of people, and I'm always so impressed with people attending that day, because if you are parenting a child who is struggling with eating, you're not short on advice. Why on earth would you sign up to a day for more of it? And when you sign up, you must think, I don't imagine you sign up with any hope. I imagine you sign up thinking this is going to be the same old stuff. I'm not going to, they're just going to tell me that I need to make them not have pudding or whatever it is. And the reason that they sign up is because they are so frightened for the well-being of their child that they'll put themselves in those situations, and they will expose themselves to the judgment of strangers and, publicly saying, all of these things. And I did a thing at the start where I asked people, who are you and what brought you here today? And one lady said, I have a 4-year-old and he only eats, these foods. He'd got 12 safe foods. And she said he used to eat 14 foods, but he stopped eating these two. And I asked her what the foods were, and they were majority beige, but there was one vegetable and there was sausages. And I said to her, "You're doing really well." And she said, "I don't feel like I'm doing really well." And I said, "You're comparing yourself to a different norm, and you're doing really well. You've got a protein there, you've got a vegetable there." And she said, "I'm just so frightened that if he drops the next food and it's the sausage or it's the vegetable, then what will I be dealing with?" And we're doing a hello to everybody. So it's not a one-to-one therapy with me and her. And we went round the room, another 6 people, and there was another parent of a 4-year-old, and he only had 3 foods, and they were like chocolate mousse and crisps. And I looked back at the first woman and I said, "You're doing really well." And you could see her look around the room and realize, yeah, I'm playing a different game here. This is my peer group. These are the other people who parent people who face sensory struggles to eating. And this is a different game that we're playing. And if that is the game that you're playing, quite often it becomes a binary conversation. So I remember being the teacher who was the teacher to those children. And the parents we had homeschool books. So the parents would write in the books in the morning and say, "Jack has had breakfast," or, "Lucy has not eaten breakfast." And then we know how much food they've had, and we get to lunchtime and we try and feed them. And then you write in the book as you send them home. And that if the book came in the morning with a message saying they've not had breakfast, and you send the book home with a message saying they've not had lunch, that parent is going to have to force them to eat in the evening, or that parent is going to attempt to force them to eat in the evening. And that narrative of have they eaten or have they not is very one-dimensional conversation. Yep. And if you look at the sensory skills that people are using when they eat, like we were doing that breakdown at the start, there's the sounds of eating, there's the smells of eating, there's the textures of eating. I remember when I was the new teacher, our school was massively overpopulated. It had been built for, however many pupils. It had at least 20% more of those pupils than it was originally built for. And the mobility needs of those pupils had amped up significantly in the time since it was built. So we had standing frames and wheelchairs and walkers and all of this stuff clogging the corridors. We had them stored across fire exits. We were full, very, very literally full. There was not enough space in the building. And we had an entire room dedicated to pottery. And I remember saying to the head teacher, "Why have we got a pot?" Like it felt like it was a school in rural Cornwall, and I thought that just hippies had taken over. Like somebody from the 70s has got in and decided all the special needs children need to learn pottery. And so we've got this whole room. We could just get rid of pottery, and that could be where we stand the walking frames and the things, and then we could escape in a fire. And I put this to her, and she said, "Jo, pottery is really important for where these children learn to eat." And you're like, pottery is where they encounter the textures of eating with no expectation of eating at all. It's totally different environment from the dinner hall. There's none of the paraphernalia of something. There's not a fork or a knife or a place setting or any of the things that will trigger memories of past trauma. This is a playful space. It was staffed with the most gorgeous, playful people. And this is a place where we get used to the sensation of texture on our fingers. If we can get used to the sensation of texture on our fingers, that is a step towards being used to this sensation on our tongue. And if you look at all those different sensory skills, if I was writing those books now, I would say, Jack's not eaten his dinner, but he heard the sound of eating in our sensory story this afternoon. And he smelt the smell of Lucy's dinner as she ate sitting next to him. And he's played with textures of, these 3 different types of textures he's touched today. And these are how we are building him towards. And you're on that narrative of small steps towards managing something rather than the all or nothing affair. But whilst you're on that narrative, you still have to be feeding them. And so looking at how you offer that food in a way that is low impact on the senses, stuff like, what's the drink? Huel. It's meant to be a complete meal in a bottle type of thing. You've taken out the requirement to chew, you've taken out the colors, you've neutralized a lot of. It's an incredibly boring way to eat, but it's relatively healthy. There are options. It's not always possible. I do remember one mum who had a child who only ate chips, and she was desperate to get some vitamins into him, and she would buy kids vitamins and crush them up and then try and lace them into the chips. So she'd come into school to do it, and she'd slice a chip open with a scalpel, lace it with vitamins, and then she'd show you all the plate of chips, and she'd be like, can you tell which chip it is? We're like, no, he's never going to know, because he ate his chips super fast. Like, that chip will be in and swallowed before he knows it, and he would eat everything but that chip. He was so like, it's hard to do. Yeah.
But one of the things, you have children who eat in front of an iPad.
Yes.
And in my head, it's like, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be having. But if you are struggling with those sensory issues, if you're struggling with the sound, if you're struggling with so many things, having a distraction isn't a bad thing. If you are literally
ideal, yeah,
having someone who hates eye contact and you're just sitting there facing them, making eye contact, they're going to feel really uncomfortable. If the bit they struggle with is the only thing in the room, and then the person trying to make them eat it facing them, then you're asking a lot. Whereas in reality, if you could be sitting on a sofa watching your favorite TV show and that food is in front of you, to me, you're removing a lot of demand.
Yeah. So one of the things that I talk to parent groups about is distinguishing between what's necessary and what's a cultural tradition, because the most important thing to do is to feed people. And a lot of the way that we feed people is steeped in tradition for all sorts of lovely reasons. It is lovely to sit down at the table with your family and have a meal, and to go through all the formality of, place setting and things like that. It adds to the experience. That's why the gastro chefs are creating these gorgeous immersive experiences. But those things are not necessary for eating. What is necessary for eating is that food goes in the body.
Yep.
After that, none of the rest of it is necessary. It doesn't have to be at a particular time of day. It doesn't have to be off a plate. It doesn't have to be in a particular room. It doesn't have to be doing a certain thing. It just has to be food into the body. That's the start out bar. That's the important bit. Everything else is decoration upon that. And looking at how you create that motivation to eat is interesting. So if you distinguish between extrinsic and intrinsic motivators for eating. Extrinsic are all the carrot and stick things. If you don't eat your dinner, then this. If you eat your dinner, then, all of that. Extrinsic motivation doesn't work, doesn't create long-term change, can be harmful. Is people who are supporting people who struggle with their eating will already have tried it and will know it doesn't work. Intrinsic motivation is when that person decides, I want to do this. I'm going to eat this. And I remember meeting a family, and their daughter was a beige eater like me, but she obsessively watched fast food adverts on her iPad just over and over again. Like, that was her, like, doom scrolling. She just watched adverts for fast food. And her dad picked her up from school one day. And it was interesting that it was her dad, not her mum, because it was normally her mum. Her mum was very much like the primary parent. Her dad was more background, off at work type of thing. He picked her up from school one day, and she said, I want a spicy chicken McNugget meal or something like this. And it was a really like a zinger, blazing, I don't know, nonsense fast food thing. And he thought, it's like £14 or something like that, and she's not going to eat it. And like, what's the point? But she said it very clearly, and she hadn't said it before. So he was like, what the hell? Drove her to the fast food joint, bought the zinger, spicy, whatever it was, meal, gave it to her, and she ate a lot. And she'd not eaten any kind of anything like it before. And she ate a whole fully spiced meal in one go. And the difference is because she'd decided to. She'd watched it. She'd studied it on the adverts. She understood exactly what it was going to be. She'd seen all the little animations of how your mouth was going to blow up. She knew what was going to happen, and she bought it and she ate it. And if you can instill intrinsic motivation, you get much, much further than trying to extrinsically motivate. But how you build intrinsic motivation is like subliminal messaging with advertising is a good one.
So, also, why I said mac and cheese or macaroni cheese is a food group, not just a one item of food. burgers are the same.
Yes.
So my daughters, we'd go for McDonald's. They go, what should you have? We went for a Burger King. Do you want a cheeseburger? Yes. Didn't like it. Why? Because it wasn't the McDonald's cheeseburger. That's what she was expecting. It was a different burger. It was a bread. It was the burger. It was ketchup. It was cheese. Very, very similar, but in reality, completely different. And so that took them a while to realize that burger isn't a single item. Burger is a concept.
Yeah.
And once we got through that, we got there. But what we've got to the point of is they'll eat McDonald's, they'll eat Burger King. At home, I don't like it if I go out and buy a pack of 4 burgers and I cook it. I have to buy mince, just some salt and pepper, nothing more. Squish it into burger shape, barbecue it or grill it, whatever. They'll eat it. And they do taste different to a burger. Ingredient-wise, they look the same, but they do taste different. So when you see something like that zinger, or they like chicken nuggets, you can't just go home and buy some Iceland chicken nuggets and cook them in the oven.
No.
It's got to be in that box.
I have had families who get the fast food packaging and try and package up food that's not in the. Sometimes it works, but
it is that certainty that this is what I'm going to have, this is what I'm going to expect. That's a really big thing.
So things like being involved in cooking and being a part of the process help with that in the way that they help all children. But having agency over if you are anxious about something, and if you're struggling with the sensory world, eating is going to be an anxiety-inducing experience. If you're anxious about something, what you need is more control over it. Like anybody who's feeling anxious needs more control in order not to feel anxious. And so challenging some of the traditions around eating and putting eating into that person's control. So playing with food. You should never play with food. You should absolutely always play with food. You should play with food. It doesn't have to be at the dinner table. One of the really successful strategies I've encountered is graze plates, where families put out just a small amount of food on a plate, just around in the household. You're not told to eat it. It's just kind of there. You're allowed to eat it. Maybe you would see somebody else eating off the plate so you know that this is a plate that you can eat off, but you don't get told, there's your food, you must eat it. And you would set out a graze plate with food not touching, clearly. And you might put just very small amounts of food on the plate because you're not placing the demand of you've got to finish your dinner. It's just a very small amount of food. And if I was setting up a graze plate for somebody, I would probably put a little bit of like a favorite, like jelly babies or chocolate buttons or something that is a food that's going to tempt them to that plate alongside other types of food, maybe not too many, but what you hope is that somebody sees the chocolate buttons just on the side in the corner of the room, not at a table, not with a knife and fork, not a plate-shaped plate, but like one of those long, thin, rectangular plates you get at dinner parties, that type of thing. And they just eat a button and nothing bad happens. So they've learned, I can eat from that plate and the buttons all run out. Maybe they'll touch something else on the plate. They don't have to eat it. Maybe they'll interact with it. Maybe they'll pick it up and sniff it. Maybe they'll put it on their tongue. Maybe they'll try. But in order to get them to do that, there needs to be absolutely no pressure to do it. It needs to be totally incidental. The minute you go, why don't you try? Oh, the chocolate buttons are finished. Why don't you give and it's gone. It's gone. It just has to be total. But I've known families who've got it working, who can put out, like a piece of cooked fish on a graze plate. And actually, the idea that we're supposed to have 3 meals a day and that you're supposed to eat a lot and then not eat and then eat a lot and then not eat is a cultural tradition. We used to wander around grazing, so you're not doing anything wrong by not feeding a whole meal. The point is just to get food into the person. So graze plates can be a really nice thing. And I often think about how I became somebody who eats more widely. So my kind of transition story from restrictive eating, I wasn't like my parents would have forced me to eat things in the way that I'm sure your parents forced you to eat things. So I didn't, as a teenager, only eat beige. I had to eat various other things, but it was always difficult and it's always a point of tension. I eat really slowly and I get into trouble for that. It wasn't until I went to university and I had full control of my own diet that I began to eat in better ways. And it's not when I went to university, very much not, because when I went to university, I stopped eating all of the things that I had been made to eat because now I can choose what I eat. So I lived almost entirely off Monster Munch. And we've just been looking at in the snack cupboard here at B Squared. And Dale has Monster Munch in the snack cupboard.
I currently have. Something tells me I won't have soon.
Well, so my view as a first year at university was if you have, so for example, if you had pickled onion Monster Munch, you've got your vegetables accounted for there. You've got your carbs because crisps are a carb. So if you combine a packet of pickled onion Monster Munch with, say, a roast beef Monster Munch, that is a full diet. And so I used to live off Monster Munch and penny sweets. And I aimed to have a real meal at least once a week. And by a real meal, I mean I would have like half a tin of tuna mixed in some couscous. It's like it wasn't actually a meal. It's like adult baby food. And I was able to, and that did very bad things for my health, for my weight, for my mental health. It is not healthy to just eat crisps. It does very weird things to your psychology. But after maybe a year, 2 years of being able to do that and being unchallenged, because I went to university very, very far away from home. So my poor parents didn't know that this is what I was doing. I thought one day, I wonder if I would like pickled onions because I like pickled onion Monster Munch. And so I tried a pickled onion and I did like pickled onions. They were kind of my bridging food from a diet entirely of crisps out into real food. And you go, oh, maybe I would like pickled onions. Maybe if I like pickled onions, I would just like onions. You know, maybe if I like onions, I'd like cucumber. And so now if you were to create me a dream meal, it would be a really diverse salad with lots of vegetables in it and probably bacon or halloumi or something, you know, not so good for me there. Toasted seeds, I'll do toasted seeds. But I have food that I would choose now that is food that my parents would have dreamed of when I was younger. And I got to it through 2 years of having total agency over my eating. And it's a hard gamble, isn't it? Because would you give a 6-year-old 2 years of agency if by the time they were 8, they were going to be eating what I started eating when I was 24?
At that age, I probably wouldn't.
No.
But my daughter what's for her is she's learned about cooking and she cooks a lot. So part of it is she cooked a dish at school and liked it and used food she would never have touched before. But that was the recipe. So she followed it because she likes her order and doing as she's told, and tasted it, went, it's quite nice, this.
Yeah.
So she now makes salmon and broccoli pasta with creamy sauce for her and my wife. It's got broccoli in, so I won't touch it. And then she moves on to another thing. And then she'll go, oh, I'm going to try making that. And she's making recipes which haven't come from us at all. They've come from somewhere else. And she does like a stir fry thing with coconut rice and cooked cucumber.
Cooked cucumber?
Sounds horrible.
Yes.
But only slightly cooked in that sauce. It works beautifully.
Okay.
So she's now bringing stuff to home that, again, it's an agency.
Yeah, I eat raw courgette, so it's like the opposite of cooked cucumber.
And my other daughter, who probably is the fussiest, was at work one day and someone offered her squid jerky, which is to me one of the most disgusting things I could ever think of. And she tried it, and I'm just like, but why? The answer is it wasn't me or mum asking her.
That's it, isn't it? So it's an agency thing that my 2 years of agency is set off against, you know, however many years of you have to sit at the table and you've got to finish your food and you can't have any pudding. But actually, if you can allow people agency, if you respect that this might be a different experience for them, if you give them some control, you can mitigate a lot of the stresses that end you up in those extreme situations. And yeah,
I think for her it was somebody who may be equal to them.
Yeah.
That
having somebody else help you. Yeah.
So there's lots of things I've learned on my journeys with myself and food and my daughters and food. And a lot of the time it's never about taste. It's about certainty. Texture is a really big one. And if they have got a restrictive diet, if it makes them feel safe, don't rock the boat too much, I would say. Aim for that bigger, but it's probably got to go at their pace.
You would never take safe foods away. You just look to provide the opportunity for more. And I think understanding that this might be going to be a stressful thing and allowing them to do things that help to bring down their stress, like you were saying about watching TV whilst you eat, those sorts of things. Yeah.
And don't think going for bland will be best.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, if they like bland, go for bland. But I would be interested in things with very strong flavour. Like pickled onion Monster Munch is not your start out crisp, is it? It's not the ready salted of the crisp world.
But it's got a really good crunch,
It's got a really strong
tang.
flavour. Yeah. You really know that you're eating. And that primitive part of you that is an animal trying to survive, when you get a strong message that says you've found food, that registers as safety. So things that have a hard crunch, things that have a strong flavour are sometimes a better start out option for people who are struggling at a sensory level.
I can't remember who it was I podcasted with, but they were talking about as we get older, we kind of lose our interest in food. And you're going, but a lot of the time you look at the food we're giving them, it's quite boring and bland. We should actually be going for really exciting, strong tasting, lots of texture food.
Yeah.
Because it's not registering.
Well, so there's a sensory reason why in old age we lose interest in food, which is to do with taste. So you have started this by going, it's not about taste. This one is actually about taste. Your sense of taste is a really duff sensory system. You only taste 5 flavours. You taste sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. And all of the rest of your experience of taste comes to you through your sense of smell. And I used to have to explain about this one a lot more. But then we had COVID, and everybody knows somebody now who's lost their sense of smell, and they will also know how that affected their eating. But when you don't have access to your sense of smell, the flavour profile of your food is limited to those 5 flavours. I do a thing with delegates on training days where we retro nasally taste jelly beans, which sounds brilliant because it sounds like you're going to stick jelly beans up your nose. But what you do is you hold your nose closed so that you're experiencing the jelly bean without your sense of smell. And then you get everybody in the room to put the jelly bean in their mouth. So you've got a whole room full of people holding their noses, chewing jelly beans. And what people notice as they chew the jelly bean is that it's sweet, like they get a general sweetness, but they notice the texture of it way more than they ordinarily do. They're like very aware that they're kind of mashing up a thing inside their face. Whereas when they access it through smell, they don't notice the texture so much. So that removal of the sense of smell, you get a huge sense of the texture of the food. And then you go, right, everybody let go of your nose. And the room goes, ooh, as everybody finds out that their jelly bean was Coca-Cola flavour or their jelly bean was lemon flavour. And it's only when you pair taste with smell that you get the richness of flavour profiles. And your sense of smell is one of the senses that degrades most rapidly through life. So people who are in later age often have significant impairment to their sense of smell, which isn't recognised day to day in the way that we recognise an impairment to hearing or an impairment to sight. But the way that you would notice it is people going, I'm not that interested in food, because it's boring when it doesn't. And about the same time as we lose the interest that we have in food through our sense of smell, we're also being fed plates of kind of warm mush. So there's not any interest in it through any of the other sensory systems either. So yeah, strong flavour profiles and flavours that go in to do a tiny, tiny detour into sensory geekery. There's another sensory system that comes into the face through the trigeminal nerve. So it's in your like tear ducts, it's in the lining of your nose, and it's in the back of your mouth. And that's a sensory system that registers hot, not like temperature hot, but like spice hot.
You're talking like, so is that like, the feeling when you have a horseradish?
Probably, yeah. Curry, cinnamon, they're all registered through that sense rather than through your sense of taste. So I've known people who got COVID, lost their sense of smell, were not interested in their food, but really got into curries, because suddenly they were needing that spice in order to have an experience of flavour. So it's another one to try in old age, is up your curry intake.
Definitely. I'll definitely be doing that for no other reason than I love it. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for coming on the show. We will be shortly having some pickled onion crisps for lunch.
Yeah, will we? Oh, excellent.
Other flavours are available.
To celebrate.
But that's the only monster. Roast beef is wrong. Roast beef Monster Munch is wrong. It's always,
I can't eat them anymore now.
Pickled onion.
Pickled onion all the way. Yeah.
All the way. Joe's given me some links to share, so I'll be adding those to the show notes and also ways to follow her on YouTube and all our different social medias. And you'll find the show notes on our website or wherever you listen to the podcast. Please follow us on all the social medias. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. Just search for Sendcast and you'll find us. And the Sendcast is created by us here at B Squared. And one of our frameworks within Connecting Steps is Steps for Life. And this is our framework designed for Key Stage 4, post 16 and beyond. And it looks at the functional academic skills, employability skills, and all those life skills. There's lots of that about food and cooking in there as well. And we go from the most complex pupils all the way up to sort of level 2. And here's what one of our schools say about it. We introduce Steps for Life having experienced the benefits of using Connecting Steps. It enables us to assess the relevant skills our post-16 students are developing to prepare them for adult life. Steps for Life has a very similar format to B Square's other frameworks that we already use in school, and this means that staff are already very competent and confident in using it. And also student information transfers, which saves us so much time. To find out more about Steps for Life, you can visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through it. But thank you for listening to the show, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Sendcast. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.